Hi guys, welcome to this Ymir video. I'm going to be covering bartering and commerce for beginner players, also intermediate level as well, as there's some more advanced gameplay features and tips in this video. In this video I'm going to be covering supply and demand, prices and how they change and how you can also influence them, trade routes, administration, waste, everything that affects your territory's income levels. I'm going to talk about tax and other ways that you can improve your territory's finance levels. So getting straight into it, as you can see on the screen here, I have got the price window for the resource copper on the screen. So copper is an early to maybe mid-game, you could say, resource that is really important. Obviously it's the crucial resource for the copper age. I'm going to run through some of the things on the screen. So, price. This is simply how much this resource costs either you as the state or your porcos. So as you can see, copper here, I've got mine at 11 coins for this territory. So price can change from territory to territory, nation to nation, and obviously server to server. There isn't really a fixed price, especially on multiplayer. Base price, this is the lowest price that the resource can be in comparison to how much wealth it generates. So I'll go into wealth a bit later on, but basically think of the base price as the lowest price the resource can be due to how much work it takes to be created. Minimum price, this is the lowest price the resource can be sold on your market. So what this means is it's not like base price where it's how much it costs in time to make. It includes stuff like profit margins, as you can see, 3 coins here, and also the resource costs. Another factor influencing price is market study. As you can see, it's 0 here, but market study is important in multiplayer, where the game sort of balances the price of resources based on what your neighbour's price is like, and also what's going on with the market. Supply and demand is crucial. As you can see, I've got 0% influence of price due to supply and demand, because my demand is 7.5 units, and I supply 7.5 units. If you oversupply, you will find the price lowers, and if you undersupply, the price raises. This is basic economic principles. You can use this to your advantage by oversupplying goods on the market to lower the price, making it cheaper for your porcos to buy it. But I'll go into this a bit later. Finally, we've got price arbitrage, which is the world sort of difference. It's a little bit similar to market study, but it's really, I'd say, a multiplayer thing only, where it looks at the world price. This is so the game doesn't become too imbalanced. Okay, moving on to some of the other things. We have supply on the left, production at 7.6. So this is saying that I make 7.6 units of this resource in my town, Redwood, and my industries need 21.5. So you may be wondering why the supply and demand is at 0% then. This is due to me on the right having a stockpile of copper, 124 units. So every tick, and a tick is 90 minutes for multiplayer. I'm not sure how much is at the base speed for single player, but it will obviously get shorter the more you up your speed. But for multiplayer it's 90 minutes. So every 90 minutes I consume 14 bars of copper. So when I actually reach 0 copper, this is when the supply and demand will take place, and the copper's price will rise dramatically, which will affect everything that is used to make copper, such as spears, helmets, axes, that sort of thing. So another thing I want to touch on with this price menu is the maintain stock. This is something you can do from the very beginning, and it simply is, this is the level of stock you want to always at least have. If you usually wouldn't reach this level of stock, let's say you use up all your copper, but you still want to have 20, it will actually take 25% of your usual supply and add it to the maintain stock, and then once you reach the units you've set, it will put it back. So this is really useful if you do want to have a small stockpile. State resource at the top is the same thing, however it's how much of the resource as a state, so you as the player, are actually buying for yourself. So as you can see, copper, I've got it ticked to all, which means I have bought and own all copper that is produced in this town. However, if you don't tick it, you can set a figure here. So for example, 20, and this is saying that you want to always own at least 20 of the resource. So another thing I want to talk about is supply, demand, and ideal demand. So supply is quite simply how much you put onto the market. Demand is how much your porcos, it's the amount of that resource that your porcos want to purchase. Ideal demand is the maximum amount of that resource your porcos currently would purchase, but if it's not the same as the demand, it means that some porcos can't afford it. So, for example, apples. This is a good one to show this. For apples, I'm supplying 21 on the market. The demand is 21, and also the ideal demand is 21. So this is showing that the 21 units of apples is all being supplied because all the porcos have enough to spend the 1.7 coins. Another resource that isn't the same is cider. Cider, 26 units of cider is wanted by the porcos, but only 16 units can actually be afforded by the porcos, and then I only supply 15. So you can see here, going back to the previous topic on supply and demand, there's a 0.1 coin increase due to there being more demand than supply. Okay, so moving on to the next thing I want to talk about is trade routes. This is something that in the early game is quite important. Then I've found that in my multiplayer game, at least, it's sort of phased out and market building has become much more important. But trade routes is moving your resources from town to town. You can move resources from your nation to other members of your nation or to other nations entirely, but this usually isn't profitable. So it's usually for your cities. So let's have a look at trade routes. If you go to the resources and you click this arrow, once you research trade routes, you'll enter the trade routes menu. At the top we have cargo. In Redwood I actually don't produce any cargo. This is 0 out of 0. But once you've built the trade route buildings, you'll get cargo once you've fulfilled the jobs. So current importations, simply what this territory is importing. Exportations is just what the territory is exporting. Operated trade routes is the trade routes that this territory actually operates. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's importing or exporting itself. So for example, in my playthrough in the multiplayer game, I am actually having Apple Bay as my exportation city. So you can see I produce 28.8 cargo with a price of 1.1 coins for the cargo. Apple Bay actually operates lots of cargo, however it doesn't import or export that much. It only imports 2, exports 1, but it operates quite a lot of routes. And this is because I produce a lot of cargo cheaply here. So how to start a trade route. What you do is you go to the city that you want to that has the resource you want to move. So let's say Apple Bay. You click the new trade route button, select the resource you want. Also make sure show all resources is ticked. So select the resource you want. Let's say apples for Apple Bay. It says here I produce 4.9 surplus per tick. So I'm going to send 4.9. Send order. Then I find the city that I want to actually receive this good. So let's say Turin. You then go to new trade route, and then below it, it shows all the current offers you have access to. And like I said before, these are usually your own internal offers. It's not very profitable to do like international trade routes, but if that's what you want to do, then that's up to you. So, apples. Here, once you've clicked on this, it shows the cargo cost for apples. So, to transport 5 apples, it costs 1 cargo. And it's showing how much they're going to be priced at, which is 1.6 coins. Here, you've got how much it's costing the different places. So you can see here that it's going to cost 8 coins to actually buy the apples from Apple Bay, 2 coins for the cost of the cargo, and then they're going to be sold for 8 coins at Turin, giving a -2 profit. However, the game doesn't always get this fully right, and it may say it's going to be a negative deal. However, with your sort of knowledge, you can use this to make more profit. But this is a good way to see if the deal is making you any money. So, once you're happy with what it is, you want to select the trade route operator. So find the city you want to do it with. So in this case, I'd want to do it with Apple Bay. And then you'd click Open Trade Route. A few more things I want to talk about with this is the distance factor. So this is really important with trade routes. The further and further away your city is from the trade route operator, so Apple Bay is the trade route operator and the exporter, and we've got a distance of 2, so the further away you are, the more the cargo required increases by. So it only costs 1 cargo to to transport apples. However, we've got a distance factor of 2, and so it costs 2 cargo. So this is bad because it means you have to pay more for cargo costs, and you'll need more cargo jobs due to requiring the more cargo resource. So that is really important. That is why it's a good idea to build cities in between cities that can act as the trade route operator. So if I was going from mountaintop over here to Turin, this is a huge distance. Apple Bay is in between, and it lowers the distance. So there's 2 types of cargo buildings. There is docks, and there is caravanseraries. So they both cost the same amount of resources. They both cost the same amount of resources to run. The only difference is docks are usually harder to build because they require to be built on a river or coastal tile that is 2 blocks deep. So as you can see in Apple Bay here, this is one of my other cities, I have 2 docks. Due to, maybe you can see this, maybe you can't, but the water is a certain depth here that it allows the docks to be built. So if you can build docks, always build them. They're the same price to run and build, but they give 3 times the cargo capacity. However, caravanseraries are a good way to transport goods if you are not next to any dock-able spaces, let's say. Okay, so sticking with Apple Bay, I'm going to be going over some of the ways you can increase your territory's income, especially in the early game, which I'm sure is where you are. So, the first way that you start to make money, because obviously you only start earning money when you research fair exchange, the policy, and you implement that. There are videos I've seen online for that. That's not what this video is, to show you how to do all that. It's just a bartering video. But if you go to economy, once you've got fair exchange, you activate that, and that gives you huge boosts to building efficiency and a huge drop in conflict, which is really critical to improving in the game. But anyway, once you've unlocked fair exchange, it comes shortly with privileges, which is here in power. So privileges are the first way you can make money in Ymir. The highest privilege rate you can set is 25%, and the highest contribution is around, I think, 98%. What these things mean is the 25% here, which is what I've got it set as, is the amount of money your leader takes for himself. The treasury contribution clearly is the amount of money out of that 25% that he actually hands back. So if we come to population here, this isn't my capital, so I do not have a leader unit, but these represent the different jobs and workers. One of these would be a leader. So let's say the oligarch is a leader. The number above his head represents the amount of wealth he has. So the more wealth your leader has, it gives him more access to buy better resources. But most importantly, if he has more wealth than the other porcos in the village, it improves conflict. But anyway, what you want to do is you want to set your thing. You can sort of balance it at 20 to 25% income from privileges, and you want to give about 95% back. Because as you can see here, leader's personal wealth, 352 coins in my situation, is generated through this in my capital, which is a lot of money. Quick note on that, you will only get that in your capital. So that 25% taking of privileges will only occur in your capital. So it is good to specialise buildings in your capital. Once you get a bit further into Ymir, the next way you start making money, and this really broadens your ability to make money in other cities, is taxes. So if you go to government, economy, taxation. So taxes is quite simply taking a percentage of the wealth generated by your porcos, and this occurs in all cities. So I've set my tax at 50%. 50% tax dramatically reduces loyalty in your cities, and in fact when you enact the tax, it actually decreases the loyalty of all your cities by that amount. So for example, if I enacted the 50% tax, I'd lose 50 loyalty instantly in all my cities. So that's a really, really important thing you need to understand. But taxes is the really important way to generate money. As you can see, 870 coins is generated by tax. So that's the biggest way that I earn money, and that you will earn money as well. One big way that your territory is affected is waste. So if we come to the economy menu here and then you click waste, you can see how much waste you have. So I've recently moved into the Bronze Age, and so I've unlocked the tax collector building, which reduces my population corruption waste. But as you increase your size of the population, it reduces your administration, and it also increases corruption, which leads to more waste. So as you can see here, I have 26% waste from local administration. So I'm actually losing 15% because the waste reduction services cancels this out. So 15% of my 15% of my tax income, which is 33 coins, is being lost. Waste is really important because everything you buy for your goods, let's say you buy 5 hammers at 1 coin, you'll have to pay 15% extra to incorporate the waste. So waste really does build up. So you need to get on top of managing your waste and not growing too quickly. Another thing, just touching on the waste before I move on to the next topic, is that the more cities you build, the more administration you lose. So this means that even if you have enough state power to build more cities, you will actually have more unprofitable cities because the administration decreases. So finally, on the last chapter that I want to talk about, to do with commerce and bartering, is the way to maximize your income. This is probably the most important chapter, but if you didn't know the previous information, then make sure you know that before you listen to this. The first tip I can give you is to specialize in a certain field. What I mean by specialize is, in Ymir, you can invest civilization points in the top left. You want to invest those civilization points into a certain field, such as metallurgy, so copper ore, copper, bronze, that sort of thing. or you can invest it into more agricultural things like apples, wool. Specialising is really key because when you're on a multiplayer game, at least, there's so many competitors that if you don't specialise, you can end up having mediocre prices everywhere, meaning you never really are able to sell goods. So specialising just almost guarantees that you're the market leader in a certain field. Specialising in more profitable markets such as metallurgy is better because you'll earn more money and become more powerful. However, it's much more competitive and also requires you to have access to materials such as tin and copper in your nation. Another way to another way to increase your income is to fulfill your consumer good needs. So if we go to resources, going back earlier to supply and demand, consumer goods, well, at least I call them consumer goods, are items such as clothes, leather clothes, pottery, cider. It's non-vital needs that your porcos can purchase. So, for example, leather clothes, what is best is to fulfill these so you reach your demand fully filled. This isn't always the best situation, as obviously, talking about before, supply and demand, I'm not currently meeting demand, and so actually there's an increase in price. So you can make more money if you sort of balance it where you're just underneath fully supplying. That way it raises the price. However, I'd say it's usually better to try and meet demand. If you've got an item like pottery, which usually has a very high ideally needed, it is sometimes better to oversupply so you can decrease the price and increase the sales. Another tip to increasing your wealth and income in Ymir is to invest your money. What you need to understand is wealth and money are not the same thing, and especially in Ymir. As you can see in the top left, this is my money, 8,500 coins. So with 8,500 coins, I could buy almost 8,000 apples. Obviously not 8,000 because they're over 1 coin, but I could buy maybe 7,000, 6,000 apples. Apple's wealth, however, is only 0.02. So wealth goes towards your score and is how much effort and work it takes to make something. The price is what the players and the porcos decide it is through supply and demand. So, say this again, let's look at horses. Horses, their wealth is only 0.05. Basically, very similar to cattle. However, if you look on the market for horses, in my server at least, there's huge demand for horses, with them being at 25 to 40 coins. That doesn't change the wealth, it only affects the price. So now you have a basic understanding between the difference of money and wealth. I'd give you the tip to invest your money to increase your wealth. Going back to before, how the price doesn't affect the value of the good in its wealth. Buying and selling goods when the price is high to buy goods that are low, that have a good amount of wealth, that's a good way to increase your money in the long term. But also investing money in general to improve your growth and your building upgrades, that is really, really key. With 8,500 coins, I actually have quite a lot in stock, and I could do a bit more to invest. What I mean by investing is, like I said before, it could be buying goods when they're cheap and then trying to sell them later on when they're a bit more expensive. It could be buying tools needed to upgrade buildings, such as houses. I could buy tools to upgrade them to level 2 large houses. It could also be buying goods to increase my army size. That's what I mean by investing. Don't stockpile too much money, because at the end of the day, money is only the way to increase your wealth. On its own, it's not that useful. Finally, a good way of maximising and increasing your income is to keep a good eye of your balance sheets. So if you go to top left and you click Treasury, it will take you to your Treasury and your budget balance sheet. And you can actually see where you're earning your money, where you're spending. At the moment, I've just entered the Bronze Age, and I'm spending a huge amount of money on state purchases, which is a 618. So I can see that actually that's where I'm spending my money. I can also see that I'm spending 100 coins almost on my militias and armies, and I'm spending almost 100 coins on paying for my policies, but 236 on waste. So you can actually see that waste can build up and be a big chunk of your entire treasury gone. So that waste is a great way, minimizing waste, sorry, is a great way of increasing your finances, but also watching where your money is spent. Don't be afraid to buy lots of things through the state purchasing, because at the end of the day, buying it in advance doesn't change the amount spent unless you know there's going to be a price change. So even though I'm spending 620 on state purchases, that is me simply buying it now instead of having to spend that money at a later date. This video has been rather long, and I haven't even been able to cover too much of Ymir, because it's such a advanced and broad game. However, I hope you have learned something new and at least have a bit more knowledge than when you first clicked on the video. Please give the multiplayer a try. The multiplayer is so much better than single player. I invested about 30 hours into the single player. I started the multiplayer 200 hours in, and I'm still loving it, and I'm kind of addicted actually. This is why I'm making these videos, just as a way so I can transfer some knowledge that I've learned to you guys, so you can get into the multiplayer yourself. So don't be afraid. Ask any questions in the comments, and thank you for watching.